We need to talk about what's going on at Liverpool in today's video because it's pretty nuts. They won the league, 5 months ago, 6 months ago? And now you've got Arne Slot with more losses than Ruben Amorim, Manchester United above Liverpool in the league table with 4 losses in their last 5 Premier League games. They're not on a good roll. I mean, they're doing quite well in the Champions League. We'll give them that, beating Real Madrid. And look, the Man United fan in me, I like to smile when I see this. But from a Liverpool perspective, this is a joke. This is a disgrace. We've got to talk about Arne Slot. We've got to talk about what's going on with the players, Arne Slot, the dressing room. Is there bigger issues at Liverpool, the new signings, and more? But before I get into today's video, I do apologise if the audio isn't its best. I'm on the go, so I'm filming in like one of these soundproof boxes, and I don't have my mic on me. Same with lighting and quality, but I hope the video is okay for you guys. But we've got to talk about Liverpool because this has been some severe drop-off, and I don't think it's just on Arne Slot, but I don't think it's just on the players. I think it's a bit of both. I think there's a mentality issue, but also other players playing for Arne Slot. Because against Real Madrid, the players were playing for Arne Slot, but against Man City, was the same effort levels there? I do agree that you didn't get any luck versus City with the penalty, with the goal being ruled out, with Gakpo and Salah missing sitters. Could have been a different game, but I felt that City were dominant in that game. But across 2024, for both Feyenoord and Liverpool, Arne Slot lost just once. In the year of 2024, he lost once, and that was against Nottingham Forest. One single game against Nottingham Forest. Liverpool's 3-0 defeat to Man City has marked his 17th loss of 2025, which is now more losses than Ruben Amorim. So let that sink in. Liverpool had what I thought, and many people thought, was an all-timer transfer window. It was maybe one of the best transfer windows of all time. But it seems to be going wrong. Now, is that due to Slot? Is that due to the players? Could Slot be sacked? Let's discuss. Liverpool believe Arne Slot is the right man for the job, the right man to fix the current situation, the right man to help his team perform. What Arne Slot did last season was fantastic. He didn't really get a transfer window. He worked with Klopp's squad. He profiled all the players to the strength, and he got every bit out of that Liverpool team and got the very best out of that Liverpool team. But we're not seeing that this season. He's trying something different. He's trying his approach. He's trying to build his team, when in fact maybe he needs to go back to sort of what worked last season and get the best out of almost Klopp's team. I think Arne Slot, you saw versus Real Madrid what Liverpool can do. You saw versus Villa what Liverpool can do. But then versus Manchester City, Liverpool go back to the mess that they've been. I think Arne Slot is a good manager, and I think it's too early to call for Arne Slot to be sacked. But I think Liverpool fans have every right to be worried, because while I think player mentality is a big thing, the recruitment wasn't great in terms of the defensive areas that have been left vulnerable. Players like Konate outperforming, McAllister's not really been at his best, Salah's nowhere near the level of last year. It's a mixture of Arne Slot and the players, but I do think Arne Slot deserves longer. I think it would be crazy to sack him this early on after winning the league last season, especially when I do think a lot of your players aren't performing to their best. But let's talk about what's going on in Liverpool, because I think it is a bit of a disgrace. 17 losses is a disgrace. Nobody saw this kind of collapse after winning the league last season. Of course, you collapsed the back end of last season, but you'd already won the league by then. So we just assumed, well, you're hungover, you already won the league. Performances are inconsistent. Even when you were winning, they weren't great performances. And I feel like there's no team structure. There's no team structure. There's no identity. Versus Real Madrid, you see it, but then you don't see it versus Manchester City. The pressing is inconsistent. The intensity is inconsistent. Because I would say versus Real Madrid, those players were 100% playing for Arne Slot. And those players were 100% giving their best. 100% giving their best and playing their best versus Real Madrid. But they didn't versus City. And they didn't versus Brentford. Arne Slot is constantly changing formation, changing rotations, rotating players. He's confused. Arne Slot is thinking, what's working? What's going to work? It feels like there's a deeper problem because Arne Slot is trying different roles for players, different formations, different players. And the performances and the intensity is so mixed. Sometimes Liverpool come out with this amazing intensity. Real Madrid, they're up for it. And other games they come out and the standards are dropped. And I can say, well, the players aren't playing with the right intensity, but then I'll look at the pressing structure and I'll look at Arne Slot's structure and I'm saying, is this how Arne Slot wants them to set up? Or is this the players not putting it in? One thing I've always praised Liverpool for was winning mentality. Players that were warriors. Winning mentality. That's what I always praised Liverpool for. They always found a way to win, beginning of this season, last season. Right now, I actually think the biggest problem at Liverpool, in my opinion, is a mentality problem. I think the players look weak. I think a lot of them look weak. Konate is a big example of that. The winning mentality that Liverpool had are gone. Liverpool, when they now go 1-0 down, they're all looking at each other. They can flicking their arms up. The heads are dropping. The confidence has dropped. You won the league last season. You're the best team in the league. You spend all that money, and your heads are dropping when you're going 1-0 down. When you went 1-0 down and you got back into games, that was fine. But now you've lost a couple games, your head's completely dropping. Even senior players are looking frustrated, disconnected, emotionally flat. I look at Van Dijk. I look at the Atletico game where he came and he almost single-handedly found you that winner. His mentality was there. I'm not seeing that mentality. I look at the Van Dijks. I look at the leaders inside Liverpool and I say, you need to step it up. Because when Salah steps up and Van Dijk steps it up, everyone else will follow. You need to step it up. But there seems to be a disconnect. Players don't seem to be happy. Of course, there's loads of new defenders coming in. The defence has got to learn how to play together. There's loads of new players coming in. They've got to learn how to play together. But Liverpool used to be so mentally strong, but I feel like you crumble. When things are going well, things are going great for you. But the minute you lose 2 games in a row, you collapse. We even saw it in Klopp's last season. Klopp had you in a title race. You lost to Atalanta, then you just collapsed and fell out of that title race. You collapse. When you're playing great, you're great, but you collapse so quickly. And I do think neglecting the defence was a big issue behind that. I do think your defence is a problem. The press has been broken. Your defenders are constantly exposed. Has Konate been good this season? No. Van Dijk's been okay. Konate's been poor. But where is the protection? Obviously, you're 10 times better when Gravenberch plays. But Arne Slot deep down wants to play Gravenberch higher up. Maybe a 6 is what you need. But where is the protection? Because when I look at the goals you're conceding, it's because you're either losing out on second balls or transitions because they've been able to run through your midfield. So it's not just that your centre-backs haven't had a good season and Leone's injured and Gomez isn't great and you didn't sign Gay, but your midfield has been run through. Simple cutbacks are being conceded by you. We're conceding the same type of goals. Transition. I look at Semenyo. I look at the Crystal Palace game in the Community Shield. Do you know what I mean? Like, teams are running through you. And that's something that Slot needs to organise. He needs to organise that because the midfield's not covering the defence. And then Slot's gone back to his main midfield for the last few games and it's looked better. But then what do you do with Wirtz? Because I think you're miles better when Szoboszlai and Gravenberch play. I think they're the 2 players that had good seasons and guaranteed. That is the question, because I look at the new signings and I think a lot of the new signings will be good. And I look at PSG. PSG struggled at the beginning of last season. They really did. And it took PSG a little bit of time to get going. But once they got going, they were fantastic. Arne Slot wants to have a possession-dominant side. He wants to be like PSG. And his attackers need time to settle. Liverpool spent 400 million, not attackers. Liverpool spent 400 million in total, and you've got worse. I mean, Frimpong's not really settled. Kirkus has been hit and miss. Wirtz has showed signs, but not for the kind of money you spend on him. I feel like there's a lack of chemistry, a lack of cohesion. And I do think, obviously, you spend a lot of money, there's a lot of new players coming in, but can they all play together? Was that thought about? Kirkus makes a lot of sense. Frimpong was the one I was a bit confused about, but I thought, if you're bringing in Kirkus and you're trying to do this and maybe go into a bit of a back 5, it makes sense. Kirkus, I understood why he did that. Frimpong I was confused about, but I was like, this could be a really good signing because blah, blah, blah. Wirtz looked like a really good signing, but there was obviously, how's he going to translate to the Premier League? Ekitike's been fine. Isak's been injured. I don't think any of Liverpool's signings are really questioned other than Frimpong on paper. But the new signings are struggling. Wirtz almost feels sorry for him. Wirtz hasn't been great, but he's been thrown into different roles weekly. Isak's barely used because he's been injured. Kirkus has struggled. I think Robertson's been better. Frimpong's been out of favour. Injury struggles. Does he suit the system? Who knows? It was almost like you lost Trent. You thought, what if a right back gets goals and assists? Frimpong. Maybe that's because he's more of a right winger than a right back. Liverpool look like a team where everyone sometimes playing different sport. Sometimes I watch Liverpool and you look great, and sometimes I watch you and it's 11 individuals. And I don't know if that's because of the new signings or this and that, but sometimes when I watch Liverpool, it's like 11 individuals on the pitch rather than a team. And there is some questions over Slot's tactics that I've got to talk about. Inconsistent pressing, awkward build-up, gaps everywhere. Liverpool haven't looked secure or organised in possession for a while. When you do have attacks, sometimes you're forcing long balls, you're trying too hard. It doesn't help that Salah's dropped off, that Gakpo's dropped off. But out of possession, sometimes Liverpool look confused, half pressing, half dropping. Slot's ideas aren't working, but it's also not helping that Salah's not producing like last season. The players maybe aren't stepping up to the intensity Slot wants. There's a lack of confidence in the squad, and that's really impacting Liverpool. Because Liverpool regularly play without a recognised striker in the past. But you need that guy. And you have Ekitike and you're always subbing him off. To bring on who? What, Gakpo in the middle? There's some calls I don't get. But I look at Liverpool and they're not winning the second balls. They're not being as physical as last season. They're leaving more gaps. Arne Slot is changing and chopping and changing more than last season. Maybe Arne Slot doesn't know what his best 11 is or how to get the best out of this player and that player. You sign these players, Arne Slot, you should know them. You know, Klopp knew every player he signed and had a role for them. Does Arne Slot have a role for Frimpong? I don't know. I think with Liverpool, it's a mixture of, I think Slot needs to simplify it and go back to his old tactics. But I also look at Liverpool players and think they're not giving Slot enough. They're not giving the intensity. They're not pressing loads. There feels like a lack of emotional connection. There's no chemistry between the new signings, and that will take time. They will take time. But this is nowhere near the Liverpool that won the league last season. Like, this Liverpool side right now is a disgrace when you actually consider that they won the league last season and should be in a title race. It looks directionless, fragile, weak. And it seems to just be getting worse for Liverpool. Anyway, Liverpool fans, let me know your thoughts down below on your problems. I think that Slot should be given time. I don't think the issues is necessarily on Slot. I think a big issue is defensive mistakes, recruitment mistakes in terms of neglecting defence. I think Slot needs to change things and be a little bit less stubborn. But I think those players need to step up intensity as well. Thank you very much for watching. See you next time. Bye.